The champagne was cold in my hand and the room was full of people laughing, and all I could think about was how my father had just told me, under his breath, that I didn't deserve to be there. Not whispered, hissed. Right into my ear while the string quartet played something I used to love. I took a sip and smiled at the woman across the table from me, whoever she was, because I had learned a long time ago how to look normal when something inside me was breaking. I had learned that in this family. I had learned it young. My name is Delia Marsh. I'm 41 years old. I'm the oldest daughter of Randolph Marsh and the late Carol Marsh, and for most of my adult life, the people in that ballroom had treated me like a footnote. Like a name that gets mentioned once and then forgotten. Like a chair at the table that was technically there, but that nobody really wanted filled. That night was my cousin's wedding. Tara's wedding, and I want to tell you what happened, because I have spent 23 years carrying it, and I think I'm finally ready to put it down. I grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina, in a house that looked better from the outside than it felt on the inside. My father, Randolph Marsh, was a man who believed very strongly in appearances. He pressed his shirts every morning. He shook hands with both hands. He smiled at the neighbors and said, "Blessed," when they asked how he was doing, and he meant it, because in his mind we were. We had the house and the cars and the club membership, and the kids who were supposed to go to the right schools and marry the right people and reflect well on the name. I was the oldest. My sister Joanna came 2 years after me, and then my brother Todd 3 years after that. Joanna was easy. She was soft-spoken and pretty, and she did what she was told, and my father adored her for it. Todd was the son, which meant he could do almost nothing wrong. And then there was me. I wasn't difficult, exactly. I just had opinions. I asked questions. When my father said something that didn't make sense to me, I said so, politely, and he would look at me the way you look at a stone in your shoe. Like I was a small, persistent inconvenience he hadn't figured out how to remove. My mother was different. She was quiet in the way that some people are quiet because they've given up, not because they agree. She used to sit at the kitchen table after dinner, after everyone else had scattered, and drink her coffee and look out the window at the backyard, and sometimes I would sit with her. We didn't talk much in those moments, we didn't need to. I think she saw me. I think that was enough for both of us. She died when I was 16. Breast cancer, diagnosed late, gone fast, and when she went, I lost the only person in that house who made me feel like I was supposed to be there. My father remarried 18 months later. Her name was Constance, and she was fine. She was perfectly fine. She didn't mistreat me. She just didn't see me either, and by then I had stopped expecting to be seen. What I had started doing was reading. Books about medicine, about science, about the body, and what goes wrong inside it and how you fix it. I had decided somewhere around age 13 that I wanted to be a doctor. Not because anyone encouraged me. My father thought it was a phase, Joanna thought it was showing off, Todd didn't think about it at all, but because it was the first thing I had ever wanted that felt like mine. I got a full scholarship to UNC Chapel Hill. My father didn't come to the information session. He didn't help me fill out the FAFSA. When I got the acceptance letter, he read it, set it on the counter, and said, "Well, don't expect us to make up the difference if the scholarship doesn't cover everything." It covered everything. I made sure of that. I left for Chapel Hill the August after my senior year with 2 suitcases and a backpack, and exactly 412 cents in my bank account, and I did not feel sad about leaving. I felt something closer to relief. The way you feel when a headache finally lifts and you realize you had forgotten what it was like to not be in pain. My father and I spoke occasionally after that. Phone calls, mostly around the holidays, short and careful, like 2 people talking across a very long bridge in bad weather. When I got into medical school at Duke, he said, "That's a lot of debt." When I matched into surgery, he said nothing. When I told him I was specializing in cardiothoracic surgery, heart and lung, he said, "That sounds hard." It was hard, that was the point. I want to be clear about something. I didn't become a surgeon to prove anything to my father. I didn't build my career so I could wave it in his face someday. I became a surgeon because I loved it with the kind of love that doesn't require an audience. The operating room was the first place I had ever been where the only thing that mattered was whether you were good. Not whether you were easy. Not whether you made the people around you comfortable. Just, are you good? Can you do this? Because there's a person on this table and they need you to be. I was good. I became very good. By the time I was 35, I was a cardiothoracic attending at a Level I trauma center in Charlotte. And at 38, I had been recruited to join the faculty at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, where I eventually became the director of cardiothoracic surgery. By 41, I had published more than 60 peer-reviewed papers. I had trained 12 fellows. I had been named to the American College of Surgeons Board of Governors. I tell you this not to impress you. I tell you this so you understand what my father didn't know when he leaned over and hissed into my ear at Tara's wedding. You don't belong here. He didn't know any of it. Because I had stopped telling him things. Tara is the daughter of my father's brother, my Uncle Gerald. Gerald Marsh is a decent man, quieter than my father, with a wife named Loretta who makes a peach cobbler that I have dreamed about since childhood. Tara and I were never close, exactly. There was the distance of cousins who grew up in different houses and saw each other mainly at holidays. But she had always been kind to me. When I got my acceptance to Chapel Hill, she was the only person in the extended family who called to say congratulations. So when the invitation arrived, I was genuinely happy to go. I bought a dress. Navy blue, knee-length, conservative. I booked a hotel room in Greensboro, which is where Gerald and Loretta still lived, where the wedding was being held at the Grandover Resort out on Ramada Road. I flew in on a Friday afternoon, checked in, and sat by the window for a while, watching the trees outside go gold in the October light, feeling something I couldn't quite name. Not dread, exactly. Something closer to bracing. My father was going to be there, I knew that. He was the brother of the groom's father, and of course he was going to be there, with Constance and probably Joanna and Todd and their families. I had known since I RSVP'd. I had told myself it was fine. I was 41 years old. I was a grown woman with a career and a home and a full life, and I could share a ballroom with my father for 3 hours. What I had not accounted for was how he would be, how unchanged. I saw him at the cocktail hour. He was standing near the bar with a glass of bourbon, talking to one of Gerald's golf friends, and he looked exactly the same as he always had. Tanned, upright, the kind of man who takes ups with confidence, as if the room had been arranged for his comfort. He saw me and something moved across his face that I recognized. Not warmth, not coldness either, just assessment. The same look he'd given me my whole life, the one that measured me against some standard I'd never been told about and found me wanting. He came over. Delia. He said my name the way you say a word you've mispronounced for years and have given up correcting yourself on. Dad, I smiled. I had practiced being normal. I was very good at it. You look thin, he said. I'm fine. Long drive? I flew. He nodded, like flying was a peculiar choice. We stood there for a moment in the particular silence of people who have things to say to each other and have agreed, wordlessly, to say none of them. Joanna's here, he said. Todd, too. His boys are ring bearers. I know, I got the program. You should come say hello to Constance. I will, I said. I'll find her. He walked back to his golf friend and I found the bar and got a glass of champagne and stood near the edge of things and breathed. The ceremony was beautiful. Tara was radiant. Her husband, a soft-spoken civil engineer named Miles, cried when she walked down the aisle and I thought, good. She picked a good one. I cried a little too quietly behind my champagne flute because I always cry at weddings. I think it's the hope in them. The deliberate, defiant hope. Dinner was seated. I was at a table near the back. Not the back, but not near the head table either, somewhere in that polite middle distance that tells you exactly where you rank. My father's table was closer to the front. Of course it was. I was seated next to a retired schoolteacher from Raleigh named Geraldine, who had known Loretta for 40 years, and we had a genuinely lovely conversation about Loretta's peach cobbler and the best barbecue in the Piedmont region, and whether the new highway extension was going to ruin the character of the town. Geraldine was 73 and funny and sharp, and talking to her made me forget, for a while, that I was dreading what was coming. What was coming came during dessert. My father appeared at my elbow while I was eating a piece of wedding cake. He had a fresh bourbon. His cheeks were a little redder than they'd been at cocktail hour. Can I have a word, he said. Geraldine excused herself graciously and went to find the restroom, and I turned to face him. He pulled out her chair and sat down, not across from me but beside me, close. The way people sit when they don't want to be overheard. I want to say something, he said. Okay, I said. I know we haven't always. He stopped. He pressed his lips together. He was not a man who apologized easily, or at all, and I could see him working up to something and I felt, against my better judgment, a small and stupid flutter of hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe 23 years of distance had built to this moment, to a wedding, to a man finally. Tara invited you because of Loretta, he said. Loretta pushed for it. I want you to know that, in case you thought. I don't want you getting the wrong idea about where you stand. I looked at him. Excuse me? With the family. His voice was low, steady. He was not slurring. This was not the bourbon talking. This was him, clear-eyed, saying what he meant. You've been gone a long time, Delia. You made your choices. And I think it's fine that you're here. I think Loretta was right that family is family. But I don't want you getting confused. You were invited out of courtesy, he paused, chose the word carefully, pity. If it had been up to the rest of us, honestly, we didn't know if we needed to include you. There it was, 23 years, one sentence. I felt the champagne glass in my hand go very still. I felt the room get a little distant, the string quartet, the laughter, the clink of silverware on china, all of it retreating slightly, the way sound retreats when your ears are ringing. I looked at my father's face. He was not angry. He was not cruel in the theatrical way of movie villains. He was just certain. Certain that what he had said was true and fair, and perhaps even kind in its way, because at least he was being honest with me. At least he wasn't letting me go on with the wrong idea. I thought about my mother at the kitchen table. I thought about the letter from UNC that he'd left on the counter. I thought about 12 surgical fellows I had trained, about a patient from 2 years ago whose mitral valve I had repaired in a 6-hour operation, and who had sent me a Christmas card every year since. And then I thought, I am not doing this. Not here. Not tonight. Not for him. Thank you for telling me, I said. He blinked. He had expected something else. Maybe tears, maybe anger, maybe the old reflexive collapse that I used to do when I was 17, and he'd say something like this and I'd go quiet and small. I'm going to finish my cake, I said. He looked at me for a moment, then stood up, smoothed his jacket, and walked away. I picked up my fork. I finished my cake. It was very good cake, lemon with raspberry filling, and I ate every bite. I want you to understand something about the hour that followed. Nothing dramatic happened. I did not confront my father. I did not find Joanna and demand sympathy. I did not cry in the bathroom. I danced one song with Tara's new husband when the floor opened up, and then I sat at the edge of things and drank water and watched the room and thought about catching an early flight home. I was tired. I was the kind of tired that doesn't come from not sleeping. The kind that comes from a place you used to live in and can't quite leave behind, no matter how far you go. And then Tara found me. She was still in her dress, white lace, a little disheveled from an evening of dancing, with her mascara slightly smudged and her hair coming down from whatever elaborate thing it had been at the ceremony. She sat down across from me and grabbed my hand without asking. Hey, she said. How are you doing? I'm good, I said. It was a beautiful wedding. Miles is getting me a piece of cake. She looked at me in that way she has, that direct way. My dad told me what your dad said to you. I went still. He doesn't, Uncle Randolph doesn't know, she said. That I know. But my dad overheard part of it and he was furious, and he told me and I just want you to know. She stopped. She squeezed my hand. We wanted you here. I wanted you here. Not because of my mom. Because you're family. You've always been my family. I looked at her and I did not cry, but it was close. Tara, I said. It's okay. It's not okay. She said it simply, not dramatically, just as a fact. It's not okay and I want to do something if you'll let me. During the toast, you don't have to, I want to. She smiled at me. Will you let me? I looked at her, this woman in her wedding dress with her mascara smudged and her hair coming down, and I thought about what it cost to show up for people when it wasn't required, when nobody would fault you for not doing it, when the easy thing was just to let it go. Okay, I said. The toasts had mostly happened during dinner, the best man, the maid of honor, Tara's parents. But Miles had mentioned, when he thanked everyone, that Tara had a few words she wanted to add. She took the microphone from the DJ. The room settled. I'll keep this short, she said, and there was laughter, because everyone had been saying that all night. She thanked Miles. She thanked her parents. She thanked the bridesmaids and the groomsmen. And then she said, I also want to take a moment to acknowledge someone who's here tonight who I don't get to see enough. My cousin Delia. Most of you don't know this about her. She paused, and I felt the room shift slightly, the way rooms do when they sense something real is happening. Delia is the director of cardiothoracic surgery at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. She's on the board of governors of the American College of Surgeons. She has saved, and I'm not exaggerating here, she has saved hundreds of lives. And she did it without a safety net, without anyone handing her anything. She built everything herself from nothing. The room was quiet. I just think, Tara said, her voice steady, that sometimes people in our lives accomplish extraordinary things and we don't say it out loud, and I didn't want tonight to go by without saying it. Delia, I'm so proud to be your family. I'm so proud you're here. She raised her glass. To Dr. Marsh, she said. And the room raised their glasses. I don't know what my father's face looked like. I didn't look at him. I looked at Tara, and I raised my glass back at her, and I held myself very still and very straight, because I had not let myself fall apart in front of these people for 23 years, and I was not going to start now. But I felt something release. Something I hadn't even known I was still holding. I found Tara later near the end of the night, when the band had wound down and the older guests were getting their coats and the floor was scattered with flower petals. "Thank you," I said. "Don't," she hugged me. "Just come to Christmas this year, my parents' house. Promise me, I'll try. Try harder than that." I laughed. It surprised me, the laugh, how real it was, how easy. I found Uncle Gerald near the door, and he hugged me hard and for a long time, and he didn't say anything, and I was grateful for that, because there wasn't anything to say. I didn't find my father. I didn't look for him. I walked out into the October night, the air cold and clear, the parking lot lit up amber under the resort lights, and I stood there for a moment and just breathed. Trees in the distance, dark against a darker sky. Somewhere inside, the DJ was playing the last song. I thought about my mother at the kitchen table. I thought about the drive I used to make in my mind at 16. The imaginary drive away from that house to somewhere I hadn't figured out yet, somewhere I was just allowed. Somewhere no one was measuring me. I had been measuring myself for 23 years instead. By papers published and surgeries completed and fellows trained and lives pulled back from the edge. Not for him, for me. Because that was the only measurement that had ever felt true. My father had told me I was there out of pity. He didn't know what I had built. He didn't know my name. Not really. Not the name I had made for myself in operating rooms and conference halls and early morning rounds. The name that 200 people in that room had just raised a glass to. Dr. Marsh. That name was mine. He had nothing to do with it. I got in the car. I drove back to the hotel through the dark October streets of a city I had grown up in and left and never quite returned to. The radio played something low and country, and I let it. I rolled the window down a little and let the cold in. In the morning I would fly home to Nashville. I would be in the hospital by noon. There was a patient, a 64-year-old retired teacher, whose aortic valve repair I had been planning for 2 weeks, and she was nervous and I had promised her I would stop by before the weekend was over. I thought about her as I drove. I thought about the specific ordinary miracle of the thing I got to do every day. To stand in a room with the right tools and the right training, and a person who needed help, and to simply be enough. To be exactly what was required. My father would never understand that. I had spent a long time grieving that he wouldn't. I didn't think I was done grieving it, not entirely. These things don't end cleanly. They just get smaller, slowly, over years, until you can hold them in your hand and look at them without going under. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, the grief felt smaller than the rest of it. I pulled into the hotel parking lot and sat in the car for a while, engine off, listening to the quiet. A text from Tara: "So glad you came. Don't be a stranger." I sat with that for a minute. Then I texted back, "I won't." "Congratulations, Tara. You picked a good one." I went inside. I went to bed. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I slept without dreaming about the house on Greenbrier Lane, without the particular weight of that family's silence settling over me in the dark. I just slept. And in the morning I went home.